You've done this before.
No, I haven't, actually. You'll find out why. Before we talk about Wharton, let's talk about business education. U.S., globally, where you see it going, how your views have evolved there, and then we'll get into Wharton a bit. Let's talk about business education.
Yeah, so, we prepared for this. So it might surprise you to know, Bob, that I've actually been doing some research on the world of business education.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, so, it is, let me just start, I'll start with a couple of little did you know factoids,
Please.
And then we can go from there. So if you think about all of our understandings of top business schools, it's all driven by the full-time MBA program. I'll ask you, what % of business degrees issued in the US today are full-time MBAs?
30%.
Anyone in the audience got over under there on the 30%? Under? I'm hearing 25. I can play the auctioneer game now.
Yes, yeah, the old direction.
Full-time MBA, yeah. 10? Whoa, it's gone way down.
Wow.
They're undercutting you here, Bob. 40%. 5%. Hey, not bad. If we go from 0 to 100,
right.
Someone's bound to be right. The answer is 2%.
Really?
Yeah. So, so the full-time MBA, which drives all of our understandings of business schools, in fact, is a tiny sliver of the market. The bulk of business degrees in the United States are undergraduate business degrees, 75%. In fact, 20% of all degrees issued in the US today is an undergraduate business degree, which is quite extraordinary. So it's not bad that Wharton's got the #1 undergraduate business program in the world,
Correct.
Not only in the country, but the world. Any undergrad alums in the room tonight?
That's good.
More power to you.
Has that number changed, by the way, the 2%? Has that been sort of a static, or is it declining?
I've been trying to do some overtime. I can give you a little overtime, but no, that's the snapshot. That's a 2014 snapshot. There's an institution called AACSB, which accredits business schools. It's got about 1,500 schools in it. So it's a pretty good sample, this one, where I've been slicing the data. And that's what comes out. If you get outside the US, the biggest business degree is a non-MBA master's, which has also been booming, specialized master's degrees, finance, marketing, management, etc. And those degrees are growing really rapidly. I know this from my Australian experience. In terms of the overtime change, full-time MBA numbers in the US have actually gone up a little bit, but not nearly as quickly as part-time. And then there's a vertical curve on online MBAs.
Okay.
So they're growing really rapidly. And I think today online MBA is about twice as large as face-to-face MBA for the country as a whole. The other thing that people were worried about demand for full-time MBA after the financial crisis. So I just got some data yesterday that I think is quite interesting, which is unique GMAT test takers. So you don't want to have the number of GMAT tests because lots of people take it lots of times to improve their score. So if you do the aggregate 2005 to 2015 GMAT test takers, the number is about -7% over that period. The number, but that conceals massive global variation. So the China number is up 300 or 400%. The India number is up 100%. And India plus China now is about 2/3 or 3/4 of total US test takers. The US number is -30%. So what does that tell us? It tells us that demand for the MBA is growing internationally with elite. We know this, right? We know this from our own applicant pool. Demand for the MBA is growing internationally. Why is it declining in the US? I think it's declining in the US because the opportunity costs of full-time study for somebody at 28 are just extraordinarily high. And if you think about this, I now understand it from the side both of the students and their employers. So I'll tell you an anecdote and stop here. So an early meeting I had in New York was with great Wharton alum Vic Malhotra, who runs McKinsey Americas. And so I just asked Vic a softball question about what do you think about the Wharton School? And he said, listen, I love employing Wharton undergraduates. They're fantastic. I love Wharton MBAs. I just don't want our best people to go back and do a Wharton MBA. Why? Because they'll leave the firm for 2 years at minimum, and there's a good chance they'll leave. So full-time MBA, two things about it. No surprise, full-time MBAs are a 24/7 life because the students know they've given up so much to go back to school, they've got to jump in with both feet. But the second thing is we have to think about the career perspective of MBAs, and many more MBAs, I dare say, than when you were a student, are now thinking about career-changing moves and moving into entrepreneurship, having had a very successful start to their professional careers. I just filibustered for 5 minutes on that. That was terrible.
That was great.
So I'm going to stop now.
Well, let me ask you a question then. So does this argue for a subject we've talked about before? I don't know how many people, I went straight through, undergraduate, right through to an MBA. So the comment you're saying about the tremendous cost of stopping, doesn't that argue, again, for the notion that perhaps we should be more open to taking people straight through from undergraduate school, number one? Number two, in a world we're going to talk about too, about increasing interest in entrepreneurship, innovation, I would think the personalities and characteristics of the people interested in those areas would argue for people that are younger, excited, want to build a business, that would argue again that maybe we would attract a different group and perhaps drive us forward in those areas by being more receptive to taking a person 22 instead of waiting for 26 or 27.
Two fantastic questions. Let me just go with the first one because we can return to entrepreneurship because I think it's a really big subject. So submatric is what it's called at Penn, and the submatric, I don't know whether did anyone else do undergraduate and then an MBA straight in the room? Okay. What's happened over time is that program has withered on the vine a bit as the view has strengthened that the best full-time MBA students have 3 or 4 years work experience before they start. That now runs into this opportunity cost problem. So I'm thinking not only of reviving the traditional submatric, but adding to it in 3 ways.
Okay.
First way, what about somebody who did a history or an English degree who wants to transfer into Wharton while they're at college, but for whom it might be better if they finished the history degree and then did an MBA? Now, of course, it's obvious if you think about engineering. You get some technical engineering, you'd love some business savvy on top of that. But think about, liberal arts I think liberal arts, the value proposition of liberal arts is under stress at the moment. So we see incredible pressure from undergraduates to transfer into the Wharton School once they get to Penn. I think that's a bit of an invidious game. It'd be nice to make it positive sum, and a way to make it positive sum would be to be able to create an MBA pathway for students. That's true for Penn students. I think that's probably true for students all around the country and around the world, in fact. And so that's the second thing. We'll expand it from Wharton undergrad to MBA, to all of Penn to Wharton MBA, then to other undergraduate degrees to Wharton MBA. But the point that the MBA program, that the leading MBA programs make is true, that having students with a lot of real world experience makes them better able to do the kind of leadership moves that we like in the MBA program. So I think the addition that you'd make to the submatric as it was is add a year or 2 of real work experience that we might help you get, that we might supervise a little bit, etc., as part of a pathway. So you get a conditional admission to the MBA program, and then we would help you and watch you through some work experience so you could have your cake and eat it too.
But I think they've argued for some time, even when I was back there in the 70s, that the best students had 3 or 4 years of experience. Now, I generally understand with what you mean there, but I'm not sure I agree that you can just make that categorically as a statement, because I would argue, and maybe John would say the same thing, is that if I had not gone straight through to business school, I would have gotten a job somewhere and probably never come back. And in theory, you would have lost out. So I don't know what the best students.
All right, that's a good pushback. So let me say a couple of things. The first one is that you're absolutely right about Wharton undergraduates. So I think it's only 1/4 of Wharton undergraduates go back to do an MBA anywhere. which is actually good news for us and them. It means that the training we're giving at the undergraduate level is so good that it can propel people into fantastic careers. The second point, and this is no suck up to you, is it's a pretty rare 22-year-old who's in a position to mix it with somebody who's 8 years their senior. So we either have to expand our understanding and probably the kind of support systems we have for students if we've got a bigger age cohort in the MBA, or we need to ease that transition with a bit of work experience. And again, I would think probably for parents as well as for kids, if it's you've got a ticket to a Wharton MBA if you do well in your undergraduate degree and will help you get relevant work experience. I'm just thinking that's going to be a pretty attractive value proposition.
I agree. That makes sense. But I think it would be nice to broaden the group out, to bring in more people. If you talk about the challenges of attracting bright people to be MBAs, you talk about people, the MBA programs are sort of under stress, that it seems to me looking for ways to attract more students, strong students, to make sure our program and our school remains vibrant and powerful.
I don't want anyone to think what you just said, which is that the Wharton MBA is under stress. I was talking about the industry as a whole.
That's what I mean, yes.
So let me throw
you.
Another fact at you.
Please.
That's two facts, actually. The first one is that the employment statistics for Wharton MBAs are better than they've ever been, right? It's of the students looking for work, it's rounding error, people don't get jobs, and the people who do get jobs are getting spectacularly good jobs. But if you look at the industry as a whole, this is a really weird market. The biggest programs are the top programs. So once you get down in MBA land, down to, I'm thinking about number 10 in the global rankings, the MBA programs get very small very quickly. So Wharton has, over 2 years, 1,700. Harvard's got close to 2,000. Stanford is smaller by choice. Chicago's big. Northwestern's big. Columbia's big. If you get into the second 10, the total MBA programs are at sort of 400.
Okay.
Now, what that tells me is that they're doing it because the ranking is so valuable. It's not because there's a big market for their degree, it's because being ranked drives everything else they do. But students are smart. They want to go to a place like Wharton where they know that the value of the MBA is so high. The problem is not everyone can get in.